All right. Good morning, everybody. How are we all feeling? Day 2 of IBC show. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Sabrina Rodriguez. I head up digital marketing at Dentsu Aegis Network. And I'm going to be talking today about how we use Adobe Stock, along with a couple of other Adobe products, to drive consistency in our content and ultimately digital growth. But before I start, a little bit about me. So my background's really very much in social media, online communities, and then kind of that evolved into getting more involved in digital marketing. And I've had the real privilege of working for some very established B2C brands, some startups. I'm now obviously in the B2B space, but everywhere that I've worked has been going through significant digital transformation. And my role has more often than not been about building teams, building functions, building strategies really from scratch in terms of how we engage with people in this new digital economy. So who is Dentsu Aegis Network? We are a network of advertising agencies based around the world. We're based in about 145 markets. We have 11,000 clients that we work with, some of the top advertisers in the world that we work with. And it's a vast business. We're a matrix business, and it's by far and away been the biggest challenge in my career in terms of making sense of it all and trying to drive alignment. So I'm going to talk today about what we've been doing so far to try and drive a little bit of alignment in what is a very complex and large business. You may recognize some of our leadership brands. iProspect, for example, or our kind of media performance agency, Cara Media Buying and Planning. So yeah, these may be familiar to you. Our vision as a group is really about innovating the way brands are built. So we really help businesses win, keep, and grow their customers across every stage of the life cycle. And we are obsessed with our customers, and that is by no means a bad thing. But it does mean that my job as a digital marketing head in the group in thinking about our own brand is how do we innovate the way our brand is built? And that's where my job comes in. Our function is really all around driving growth for our business in the digital economy. It's changing so fast. So we basically have centers of excellence that have been set up, designed specifically to support the markets and brands across the network. And I head up the digital marketing and brand pillar. Our job is not about just giving global strategy and direction. It's also about content, toolkits, platforms, and that's where what we do with Adobe really comes in, and making sure that everyone's kind of singing from the same hymn sheet and ultimately optimizing our chance for growth. So what do I look after? Well, our digital estate, but obviously kind of brand governance comes into this. But as I was building our strategy for social media and relaunching our website and thinking about how we drive CRM and direct marketing, there were really some core challenges that became immediately obvious to me. Our brand wasn't just broken, it just didn't exist. This is a snapshot from probably January this year, actually, not that long ago. And you can see there's kind of very interesting approaches to our font, to our color, to our general look and feel. It felt like a completely different brand depending on where you were, which market you were in, which function you were in. And so this really needed kind of looking at. So I basically just thought about something that would be really simple in terms of addressing our reputation. Because this is a problem. If we're promising about innovating the way brands are built, but we can't innovate our own brand, then that's not a good thing. So we needed to really step up our game in that respect. From a revenue point of view, this also has a big implication for how we work with our clients, how intermediaries work with us. And then finally, from a talent point of view, brand pride is so important, as everyone knows, when you want to work for a brand and stay working for a brand. So it was an acquisition and a retention exercise. And really, the strategy was very simple. It's more of a cycle than a traditional strategic pillar type approach. But really, we had to optimize what we already had. We had existing brand guidelines that sat in a PDF format, about 100 pages long, that sat on our intranet. So we had to kind of depend on our people to find it. So we had to optimize what we had. We had 32 colors in our palette. We had to distill that down to 5. We're dealing with marketeers here as well as designers. And then we had to think about accessibility. And that's where working with platforms really came in. We worked really closely with the global technology function at Dentsu to think about how we can make it easier for our people to access our brand guidelines, download the right templates, and ultimately make it easier to build our brand. And then education and governance are a given with any kind of brand governance strategy. So I had someone in our team that specifically looks after that piece. And really, it's about driving two-way feedback so that we kind of have this virtuous cycle of making sure our brand and our brand hub was really relevant. Our challenge is obviously that we have two different audiences. So on the one hand, we have marketeers. So we have about 150 to 200 marketeers based around the world. And their capability and their resource varies enormously. So in some markets, you'll have a group of marketeers, some of whom are specialists, and will look after dedicated areas. And in some markets, you have one person doing marketing, comms, business development, and PR. So, they needed things quickly. They needed things that were easy to use. And on the other hand, we have our designers, about 6,000 or so that are, again, based across the network, primarily focused on our clients, but increasingly we're leveraging that resource for our comms and marketing efforts. And we're actually starting to see some onboarding, some permanent onboarding of some of those designers within our marketing and comms function. But obviously, their behaviors are so different. Their expectations are different. The technology they use is different. Marketers generally live on Microsoft, while designers generally live on Adobe. So we had to build something that would work for both audiences while driving towards the same goal. So we kind of built a very, very simple structure. There were going to be some assets and the guidelines that would be applicable to both audiences and accessible to both. But ultimately, we built 2 different toolkits. And on one side, obviously, from a marketer point of view, we looked at Microsoft. Then for the designers, we looked at Creative Cloud libraries. We looked at how we could use Adobe Stock. We looked at how we could get them on board with the ambassador program. So we're obviously looking at how we can start to bridge these two and make it easier to integrate. And I'm going to be talking more about the designer toolkit today, but I'm available for questions after if you've got any other questions about how this whole thing works. We work with Adobe very closely. They're a big strategic partner of ours. And in order to make this work, really the heartbeat of our brand hub is Creative Cloud libraries. We couldn't do what we're doing without that. But it also works really seamlessly with how we use Adobe Stock and how we use Adobe Premiere Rush increasingly, which some of you may know. It was fairly recently launched by Adobe and is a simpler video editing tool for definitely the marketeer, and certainly for an increasing number of videographers. So I'm obviously going to be talking about Stock, but I can't talk about Stock without talking about how it fits into the rest of it. So that's what I'm going to do today. So this is our brand hub. It sits on our intranet. It's nothing particularly beautiful to look at, but it's simple to use. You have your marketer toolkit and your designer toolkit. You can see you've got 2 links here. The first to the Creative Cloud library. And in this library, we basically host our swatches, our fonts, our logos, icons, like all the core brand assets that you need. And if you follow this, it can integrate with your Creative Cloud apps, which I'll show you later in terms of workflow. Then we have our brand media library. And this is all the content that we have pre-licensed, pre-approved from Stock. It includes imagery and video that we've made sure fits with our brand, look and feel, and is, again, really easy to download in a click. And you don't have to license it. You don't have to think about, compliance and all that kind of stuff. It's all done for you. And again, the way that we set it up means that anyone with an enterprise login can access this, even marketers who don't necessarily have Creative Cloud. We have a global deal in place with Adobe, specifically around Stock, to address a number of challenges we were facing. As I said, we are a matrix business of about 950 agencies, all doing their own thing with clients. And we were finding, in particular in the marketing and comms function, there were some teams that were buying stock on an ad hoc basis from other providers. But if they were buying it in Poland, for example, and they shared it with the 10 leadership brands in Poland, and then they shared it with the rest of the world, it starts getting into some gray area and some uncomfortable territory when it comes to compliance. So we had to make sure we had a one-stop shop for the whole network to leverage to ensure we were compliant, but also help our reporting and to have like that content hub, because so much content was being licensed and we had no view of what was being licensed or what was being shared. So this basically helps us join the dots. There are two elements to the deal. The first is we have a whole kind of dashboard, I suppose, set up for non-client work, which is primarily what our team uses, but anyone who needs to use it for anything that's non-client facing, so pitches, events, anything we do as on behalf of Denson and our brands. We basically have a pot of these credits, so it allows, again, anyone with an enterprise login to be able to download stock and for us globally to have a view of what we've been licensing. So this has grown so rapidly, we're already at 150,000 assets that have been downloaded. So it's growing. And then the other side is around how we work with our clients, of course. So we have, again, a set structure where there's local invoice billing for our brands and set up cost centers. So it's all set up for the client cross-charging. So that's just a snapshot of how our deal works. How did we kind of build our media library? It was really simple. So from the desktop app, we're able to search technology, because we talk a lot about technology. You can see there's lots of stuff here already. We use the filter a lot. So I'm looking for images in this particular case because I want to build up my image library. I want them to be photos. I don't necessarily want illustrations. I also want it to be quite bright. We're quite a colorful brand, so I wanted to have quite vivid color. And the other thing that I always tell the team to think about when we're looking for stock is how can we make it really look like Dentsu? So we always have to include a human element, include people. And when I go back to my color swatches in my brand hub, I can easily copy in our RGB code. And immediately, within a minute, we now have lots of content that looks and feels a little bit more like our brand. So if you find something we like, really quick, easy and quick to license. And then you can see that for any content that we've already licensed, there's this blue tick. So again, as you're scrolling through your search results, it's really easy to see what's already been licensed and you can probably reuse. So that's how we use stock in the stock app. And then obviously any marketeer will know you spend about 90% of your time in PowerPoint. So the Adobe Stock add-in or plugin even in PowerPoint is really, really useful for being able to just search on the go and drag and drop content in. Again, you can see with the blue tick that it's already been approved and licensed, so you can drag that in. You can also look at your history of what's already been approved, again, throughout the network. But as you can see, super easy workflow, means you're not having to go back and forth all the time, and it just saves those precious minutes when you just need to get a deck done. This is more kind of designer workflow, so you can see you can access the brand library here in Illustrator at the moment. So you can see all of our logos in PNG, vector formats, our color swatches, gradients. We even have our color palette with our RGB codes there. We've got fonts, icons, Illustrator templates. And at the bottom here, you can see we've got our imagery that, again, is grouped by theme. So again, it's super easy. When you view by group, you can basically tailor how the library looks and feels within the app itself. So my designer in my team is doing a very quick workflow here and just shows how easy it is to pull together an asset that looks and feels like Dentsu Aegis Network. She's just dragged in a piece of stock. She's added an overlay using one of the colors from our swatch palette. And now it's really easy with text to be able to essentially choose a character style. So it's not just font, it's the whole kind of size, weight, everything. So again, it really, really helps with making it easy for our people to make things look and feel like Dentsu Aegis Network. And then the final thing she wants to do is add our logo, which is, again, super easy to do. Just place a copy, and there you go. We already have, within a minute, an asset that looks like Dentsu Aegis Network, and they haven't had to go anywhere else. It's all in the app. What I'm going to be talking about more today, and that's just obviously an oversight of how we use the Brand Hub and our brand Creative Cloud libraries. I wanted to talk about video. We're certainly seeing video as a content format grow exponentially. Year on year, we're seeing 87% growth in terms of volume of video produced in our network. We're estimated within the comms and marketing function alone to be producing 650 videos by the end of the year. And with a conservative estimate, that looks like 1,200 by 2021. So video is nothing if resource heavy. They're usually typically involving quite a lot of hours of cutting and slicing and trying to kind of get it polished and finished. But the pressure to get these videos done is increasing. We need to make it quicker, we need to drive efficiency, and we need to drive productivity. So how are we doing that? Well, we're also thinking about the formats that we use. So you can see here we have a variety of different formats. We have compilation sizzle reels, we have piece-to-camera videos at events, we have animation to bring our thought leadership to life. We do a lot of broadcasting at events and with ongoing series with our thought leaders. After all, our product is our people, so we need to sell our people. But it isn't just the volume then that's grown in terms of video, it's the breadth. The breadth of format has grown exponentially. And also, bearing in mind, these are just kind of landscape. You also need to think about square, you need to think about portrait. The breadth is also increasing. So how do we ensure there is some element of consistency when that breadth is growing? Well, I'm going to just walk you through how we might do that with one of our video workflows for a piece-to-camera video. That's a very typical video we'll do in an event like this, for example. I thought it made sense to talk about that because we use stock, libraries, and Rush within this flow. So the first thing we do is obviously when we're on the ground, we will use a camera to capture what we need in terms of B-roll, vox pops. To be honest, increasingly, we're just using our smartphones. I mean, this style of video, to be honest, kind of benefits from that reportage, gritty style anyway. And smartphones are getting so good that, frankly, they're kind of the same in terms of quality. So we've got our proprietary content. We then need to import those clips into a Rush project, which we use for video editing. It's basically just a simplified version of Premiere Pro that you can also use with your mobile, with your iPad. And as you can see, when you start dragging your content in, you select the right B-roll you want, you select your vox pops, you can see that Rush automatically numbers in sequence those clips. So once you end up dragging those into your project, it'll basically order them for you. So if you're clear and you've only got a few clips in terms of the sequence of those videos, it's really easy to already basically pre-populate your video. So you can see we're here, we're already clear on what the sequence of those videos needs to be. We're just going to add a few kind of clips to overlay some of that. The other thing we need to think about when we're building a video is music and sonic branding. Social is obviously more of a sound-off world, but increasingly we're also sharing videos in a sound-on environment, like events and pitches. So again, from our brand hub, we can download our sonic brand. I think we're the only advertising holding group with a sonic brand. We explain what that means in our brand hub and why it's important. And again, we have a pre-licensed library of music that anyone, again, can access, listen to, download. There's no worries, it's kind of covered. And again, we'll just download one of these tracks for our video. And then we'll make sure we've got our logo outro as well. So the sonic branding needs to go with our logo outro, which again, we explain in our video section of the Brand Hub. So we'll make sure we've got all of that. There you go, the outro. And then we might need some stock to fill in some of the gaps. So we've got the music, we've got our proprietary content. Some of our vox pops are talking about themes that perhaps might benefit from some stock. So again, from the Brand Hub, we can find our video library. You can look at it on web, but actually through the files on your desktop, when you sync with Creative Cloud, it's much easier to navigate when it comes to video. So this is what we do. So he's talking about data. I can see this one is in our library. It kind of, again, it looks and feels like Dan, but it has a kind of nice feel to it. I'm going to have that. And he also talks about VR. So again, this kind of fits what he's talking about. So I'm going to select these two. The other thing he also talks about is smartphones, and I can't find anything in here really that fits the bill for what I'm after. So I will go back to stock and try to find something. So again, really simple workflow. I'll search smartphone. I'll look at the filters. Again, apply the filters I walked you through earlier. I want it to make sure it's a short clip because it's just a tiny piece of stock that I want to kind of complement what he's saying. Has to include a person. I'm then going to include my color swatch. So I'm just going to check. I don't want purple. I'm going to go for blue this time. So copy in my RGB code. And there we go. We've got some nice options here. And as we scroll down, we find something that suits. So I click on it, and really, really easily, I'm just going to license that and save it to my computer. So this is how we use stock when we're kind of building out our videos, using, again, our brand hub and guidelines. So I've got my stock, I've got my music, I've got my proprietary content. I'm going to drag that all into my Rush project. You can see I've already been busy cutting and splicing and putting it all together. But as you can see, it's again super easy to just drag stuff in and make sure it's complementing what he's saying. Again, with resizing, it's literally, I mean, it's not rocket science, this. And this is what's so brilliant about Rush for the marketing and comms function. We are not professional videographers, and Premiere Pro can be quite intimidating, and there's a lot of things in there. So this just keeps it super simple, and you can literally build a video that looks professional within a couple of hours. So, you know, already that took like a minute to put that stock in, and it complements what he's saying nicely. And then, obviously, the events, sound is an issue, background noise, it's pretty loud in here. So the other great thing that saves hours of time is going into the sound settings and basically auto volume. So this is Adobe Sensei at its best, and it basically ensures that any background noise is minimized when we've got someone talking. We can then also click on our music and make sure that that is also auto-volumed, because then we want to make sure that the music comes down whenever we've got someone speaking, but that it comes back up when they've stopped speaking. You know, before, you would have to go through each clip and manually adjust the volume, and it would take a long, long time, especially when you're trying to drive consistency. So as you can see, there's another workflow, which is for social, changing the screen size. So again, in a click, we're able to make this a square video. You know, we produce a lot for our social channels, so it just, again, saves an awful amount of time, and it just is a case of auto, you know, looking through the frames, thinking about how we can make it a little bit more central, which doesn't take that long. But you can see it's a pretty easy workflow. It doesn't take a professional videographer to do this at all. And then you can see we've started using some graphic templates in here. So for this chap right here, we're going to make sure that everyone knows who he is. So we're going to drag in a nice lower third template. To be honest, you can access through Adobe Stock loads of other graphic templates. We just find that the default ones are really, really easy, and they generally fit. Because as you can see, it's a case of double-clicking, typing in the name. I mean, if anyone's worked with After Effects, I mean, this, especially as a marketeer, that could take me hours trying to do this in After Effects. This is literally drag and drop. I'm going to type the name in, choose the right font, and immediately it's starting to look a little bit more like Dentsu Aegis Network. So all the animation is already done. I don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to check the sizing. So again, you just click on it, and it's a case of simply dragging, resizing. I mean, it's like the simplest thing. And then you can just play it through, make sure that it works okay. Yep, that looks legible to me. I can read his name. Cool. There's one more thing that needs to happen, which is that it's not the right color. So if I select orange there, I select the shape, I'm just going to make sure it's got the right RGB code. I know off by heart, so I'm just going to select it. But you can obviously go back to my color swatches and copy and paste that in. And then I just select the other shape. And then I just use the eyedrop, make sure I got the right blue, and boom. Within, again, like a minute, you've now got really nice lower thirds, animated, and they look and feel like Dentsu Aegis Network. Again, with SRT files, these are very simple graphic templates. You can drag and drop in, double-click, type away. You don't have to worry with any of the fuss of anything else, any other panels and complicated bits. This is, again, about super simple video production. So I'm pretty much happy with how my video is looking and feeling. It looks like Dentsu Aegis Network. It feels like it. It's got the right music. It's got the right graphic templates and colors. I'm just going to save it and export it. We've always found that whenever we export, regardless of the advanced settings we put, it's always really good quality, which, again, for the marketeer that's not used to videography and post-production, is brilliant, because often in Premiere Pro, if you're not an experienced Premiere Pro user, you can often export and it's quite low quality because you don't know how it works. So here, it's just automatically brilliantly beautiful, and you can export it. You can publish them straight to your social channels. The reason we don't do that at Dentsu Aegis Network is just because we already have a social media management platform, but we'd love to think about ways we can integrate that a little bit more. And we are also thinking about how we might integrate it with the DAM going forward. So there's plenty of stuff we know that we need to improve. But it's encouraging that since launching this brand hub in April this year, we've already seen quite a high level of usage in the network. We've got 42,000 brand library interactions, 5,000 unique users, which is 10% of our business, which is extraordinary. And Adobe Stock is being used very healthily. And it's not just usage, engagement is growing. We're seeing a year-on-year growth of 38% in engagement with our content and 66% with our video. And I think certainly the kind of more polished and more aligned look and feel with our video that really feels like Dentsu Aegis Network is certainly helping with that. But ultimately, this is about growth. We're a business. And the more that we drive that engagement, the more traffic we drive to our site, the more conversion we drive, and the more business growth we drive. So we're really, really pleased with the results already since April, but we know that we're really early on in this journey, and I would love to hear from anyone else in the room or in this show who's going through a very similar journey or maybe further ahead. I'd love to learn from you guys. We have a lot on our roadmap. From a video perspective, we're thinking about how we can start working more closely with our brand libraries and how we integrate that with Rush. We're also looking at emerging platforms and formats. So how do we think about the new world of social and AR, and how can we also help our product designers within our network? We're starting to build proprietary products for Dentsu Aegis Network. So we need to think about, again, the different behavior of a product designer versus a graphic designer. We then also need to think about our media library. Sound is increasingly important. We have a podcast now. There's a few podcasts, actually, that have emerged from our network. So we need to think about our music library and our sonic branding a little bit more. And then from a processes and integrations piece, it's kind of boring stuff, but this is the stuff that saves hours of time when we're thinking about optimizing those workflows. So we'd love to think about how can we automate our brand guidelines and governance so that if someone drags one of our brand assets onto the wrong color background, they know about it. So we'd love to think about more that we can do in this space. And I said, we're really at the beginning of the journey. If you have any questions about any of this, please come and find me afterwards. I'm available for questions. But thank you very much for having me here. I hope that's been of some help. Thank you for having me.